Hey, welcome back, Fish on Northwest, and yes, here we are in the Bait Lab. Bait Lab presentations brought to you by Max Lure and, of course, Sportco. And pretty much everything on the counter you see here before me today can be found at Sportco or Outdoor Emporium, Sportco online. So we're getting to that time of year. Running plugs for salmon is just not only a kick in the pants, but can be so efficient and effective. Whether you're moving down river, sitting on anchor, whether you're fishing a drift boat, out of a sled, even pontoon boats, whatever your presentation is, plugs will get it done. So I want to walk through several tools that I use to put this all together and find success on the rivers, and especially as we start talking these tributary rivers, okay? Smaller water, not big wide water that we're trying to target fish. We have travel lanes, we have holes that they hold up in, we have smaller water. So I don't need a 10.5 foot rod, I don't need a 9 foot rod. I like to use, I just got a hold of these 822s. This is a one-piece 8'2", one-piece plug rod. It's rated at a 12 to 25. For me, that is just lights out all day long. Why? It's going to work fantastic for these smaller plugs with a lot of action on the tip and plenty of, the lower third of this rod is built stout to get those bigger fish in. We're gonna put plugs out there. We're gonna wrap them with some bait. We're gonna put scent on them. We're gonna encounter chum. We're not just going to get coho, we're going to get a periodic late moving king, but we're going to get those chum. And if you understand chum in the Northwest, you know you're in for a fight, and they're pretty tough fish. So you got to have a rod that's going to get it done. This 822, again, not a really long rod, so out of a drift boat, narrow water, my spread of rods out each side isn't overcompensating or reaching out there too much for these narrow conditions. This 8 foot 2 inch one-piece rod will get it done for me all day long. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to rig that too. Well, before I get there, let's talk about the reel. Definitely when you're plug fishing, reels with line counters. This is a Daiwa line counter. I like to load these up with at least 40-pound braid, 50-pound braid ideally. I'm going to put 12 to 15 foot of monofilament top shot on this. Now, I know there are the naysayers that would say, I'll never run braid for plugs because it floats. Well, I got to tell you, the diameter of the line and the less drag and friction that it puts against it in the water has your plug running more true than a lot of line belly with, say, 30 or 40-pound mono, okay? So I'm gonna put this on braid with a 12 to 15 foot of top shot of 25-pound Maxima because it's tough and it's durable. So if you think about that, if I'm putting my plug out in front of the boat, say 30, 35, 40 feet, well, the 15 feet of line that's really down there in the water is monofilament. The majority of the line goes from the rod tip into the water is the braid, which is elevated out of the water, so it's a moot point. I say for telegraphing purposes and durability, I put braid on my plug rods all day long. So yeah, get a rod with a line counter. That way, as you put out your wall of resistance and your plugs, you're going to be able to be exactly in tune with how far out, excuse me, those plugs are. So let's talk a little bit about plugs. I have on the table here tonight some 15s and some 14s. These are the Brad Killer Fish plugs. The 15, as you can see, is substantially larger than these 14s. And for this time of year and the conditions depending, when the water's up, a little off color and coming down and moving kind of fast, and you want to run some plugs, these 15s will definitely do a great job. Variety of colors out there to choose from. Now as the water begins to drop a little bit, gets a little slower and clear, get that nice emerald green and whatnot, I like to drop it down to a 14. A KF14 for me, for coho, is ideal size, okay? And I will run them things in various colors all day for a coho, and those chum will grab them as well, especially if you got chartreuses and greens and colors that the coho like, oddly enough the chum like as well. Now the one thing I will do, so this is a Brad's KF14 right out of the package. It's got the treble hooks, it has the lock ring, and on the front at the anchor point it has a dual lock, okay? This is how it comes out of the package. What I do is I take a couple different components here. I'll take some Siwash hooks, a split ring, and some swivels. And what I'm going to do on each and every one of my plugs, first of all, I take the dual lock off the front. Now, when you take these plugs out of the package, it gives you instruction on the back to where this front eye is adjustable. If my plug is running to the right and I need it to go more left, I'm going to turn the eyelet to the right. In other words, the opposite direction you turn the eye is the opposite direction that the plug is going to run. So to correct it, you turn it the same direction it's running. So there is adjustability in that, and it's simply by turning the anchor point or that front eye on your plug to get it to run true. Your plugs running true is a very important component in how well they'll perform. So there is kind of a knockoff in how to do that so you're not always tuning your plugs or it doesn't become an issue. One thing that works very well is you take a size 6 lock ring and you simply put that over the eye. Now, for whatever reason, because of the way that moves around or counter offsets the movement of that plug, I put those rings on there and then I'll clip my dual lock right from my rod onto that ring. And that split ring on there takes care of a lot of your adjustability. It just works so fantastic. I put them on every plug I ever run, and you spend a lot less time tuning plugs and a lot more time just running them, okay? So that's the first component change out. The second one is I take those treble hooks off of there, I leave the split rings, I put on a size 3 barrel swivel, and then you put your Siwash hook on the end of that barrel swivel. Now, especially for coho, because they're so notorious for spinning and rolling and flipping, if you have a hook that is anchored on a split ring and it only has a travel of about, say, 180 degrees, maybe 230 degrees, and then it locks up, now the torque on that potentially allows the fish to rip that right out of its mouth. If you put your hooks on swivels, this is 360 degree swivel time. If this is the only hook in that fish and it's back here doing rolls, it can roll all day long. Okay, we're fishing with barbless hooks. You want to make sure your hook gets anchored in there. It's going to stay and not tear out because of multiple anchor points and the fact that it doesn't pivot. So swivels for me are a big deal on my plug. So let's talk a little bit about how to dress these plugs up. Now, you can run them naked. You can put them out there and you're going to catch a certain amount of fish, just no scent, no nothing, just the color, the action, the rattle, whatever it is, the cadence that attracts fish, they're going to go after it. You can up your game. If you don't want to deal with sardine and tuna and things that I'll get into here in a minute, you can utilize a number of the Potski fire gel scents. They are fantastic. They're the most natural smelling scent that I've come across. And simply by putting this gel either on the back side of this plug or on the belly, whatever you prefer, it stays, it lasts, it definitely puts out a lot of scent in the water, and you don't have to constantly reapply it. You put a little bit on there, it's going to be there for a while. So you can set up your plug simply with the Potski's Fire Gel. It's going to work great. Other things or other options you have. Right here we have some sardine. Okay, this particular piece I cured up with just some non-iodized sea salt. What I really like to use is my natural Baraxel Fire. It has additional bite stimulants and krill scent in there. I think it does add a little bit to it, and it does a really nice job on firming up this sardine. Doesn't draw all the oil out of it, because really what we're talking about is that scent trail getting down river to entice those fish. So you want that oil to come off of this meat. This here is from tuna belly. This is a strip cut of tuna belly that's cut in half. What you'll find on your piece of tuna is you got the hard outer skin on tuna, and on the inside of that tuna belly is actually a pretty tough membrane or skin. Now, when you dissect a piece of tuna belly into strips, it's pretty doggone thick. I mean, that is way too thick to put onto a plug. The fact that it has tough skin on the outside and a really nice tough piece of skin on the inside, you can simply take scissors or a knife and go down the soft part of this meat, and we're just going to cut that in half. Okay, that way now I have two thinner strips of meat with a lot. You can see the oil coming out of that tuna belly, and it doesn't hold together very well if it's not on either side of that tough skin. But once you add a little bit of that Baraxel Fire or salt to these, they toughen up really good. But you can see, you can even push them. You just watch that oil come right out of there onto my hands. Okay, there's a lot of oil in tuna belly. And don't think coho won't hit tuna belly, because it's all about the oil and the scent. The fishier it smells, the more fish are attracted to it. So tuna belly works really well. The old standby and one of the go-tos is definitely sardine. And you can get whole sardine and fillet them out yourself, frozen, or you can get pre-filleted sardine, also frozen. And those are easy because you just take them out. I put the Baraxel Fire on them, put the Baraxel Fire on them in a container overnight in the fridge, let them firm up a little bit, and then I'm going to cut these so they fit onto my plug. You don't want to put too big a chunk of meat on there, because it's going to cause the plug to run a little bit off canter or just not perform exactly right. So it's basically just deciding how you're going to dissect your strip of meat here. Oftentimes I'll cut these belly pieces off. Now I hang on to them because on a good day of fishing, you start running out of them. You may have to rely on these smaller pieces just to have a little bit on there, okay? This one here, I can just cut a chunk off about that big or so. Now the key here is to make a piece of bait that's going to sit on the back section of this plug, not overhang either side and not cause the plug to go erratic. One nice thing that you like to do is, cut off any extra that's not necessary. And then we're going to put a nice little cut right in the middle here. Just kind of open that up, make it kind of look like a little set of legs there. And now, one new thing that's come out this last year from Atlas Mikes and Potskis is they've taken their miracle thread, their magic thread, their miracle thread, and it's colored. And it's colored for a reason. It's actually UV now. This is just going to add another attractability to it. UV in multiple colors, so you can match the color to whatever plugs you're running. Whether you do or don't, it's up to you. I like the aspect of the fact if I'm going to wrap thread on there and I can get it in UV and it adds an extra attractant to it, I'm going to use it. Okay, so now I'm going to simply take this front hook, I'm going to roll it forward here. I'm going to take this little piece of meat, I'm going to put it right there, right behind the anchor point of that hook. And see how that sits right there now? Because of that little cut that I had put in there. It's going to just help it hold right in the middle as I wrap this. And then I simply take a little piece of this thread here, center that on, and I just start wrapping. Now this is a stretchy thread that it's elasticity, and you can pull it pretty tight, and it's going to hold that meat in place. Then I'm going to flip this hook down this way so it's out of the way, and we're going to wrap the top side of this, okay? Make sure I try to keep the meat to the center, make sure your hooks are clear out of there, and we're going to put a handful of wraps on the front of this. Again, make sure you're not getting clear up high on the plug, which will get into the pull point. Make sure you're not covering the hooks up and that the rings are clear so they function. Now the other nice thing about this, you don't have to do half hitches. This miracle thread, the elasticity on it, you just pull it tight and you just break it off. It just bites into the meat really well and it actually just stays. Now if you want insurance, you can put multiple half hitches on, and I typically do, but for tonight here I'm just going to show you, you can break that off. Now you look at the top of the plug, the wraps are all midpoint here. Nothing up here at my attachment point. Swivels and everything are in the clear, so this completely functions as it should, as it swivels, okay? And that plug is ready to run. Now, a couple things I can do. These 14s typically are going to dive 8 to 12 feet. If I have a piece of water that I think is upwards of about 20 feet, that plug is going to get down to where I want it to be. I can rig my rod a little bit different. So typically I'll run that top shot with a dual lock. Dual lock's going to go right into this lock ring, and you're just going to put that plug out and let it run, okay? The other option I have is I started using the VIP sliding lock, which works great as a slider. On this presentation, I hang a single bead chain from that down to a jet 10, okay? Down to a jet 10. That's all I need, and it doesn't interfere with the performance of the plug because it's not a plug, it's not a diving plug that wiggles. I don't want it to be counterintuitive. I want to put a jet 10 down there or a jet 20 depending on the depth of the hole, and just let the plug do the work and let the jet diver just assist getting it down, okay? So I put that on a slider for when it hangs up. It's a lot easier to get off of there. And if I don't want to run the diver on here, I can still just leave that sliding lock on there and just run it, and it doesn't interfere with anything. It's completely out of the way. What I do is I take my dual lock off the end of my top shot. I attach to a barrel swivel a 6-foot piece of mono, 25 pound, and I just simply add another dual lock. This gives me 6-foot space in between my jet diver and my plug. And then I'm going to hook this right into my dual lock or my lock ring. So there's how the plug's going to perform. And it's going to perform very well because I've put that ring on there for adjustability. I have 6 feet to my sliding dropper, and this does not interfere or disrupt the action on that plug. Now again, I can take everything off of the VIP sliding lock, including the dual lock, and just have that little black piece of plastic sitting there 6 feet above the plug. It doesn't hurt a thing, okay? So I pre-rig pretty much all my plug rods with this in place. And then I simply have to add that 6-foot bumper to run a plug off of it. whether I'm putting the jet diver on there or not. So just a few options, a few different choices in plug sizes and this time of year. Your magic thread or your miracle thread options with the colors and the UVs. You can cure up your pieces of meat several different ways. Baraxo fire, you can use fire cure if you want to add sulfites to it and add a little bit of red UV to your meat underside of your plug as well. You can use the fire gels to add scent. We have a number of options that you can choose from. They all work. You just need to figure out what works best for you. Plug size, always change out your hooks, use those swivels to your advantage, and you're going to find success.